people need to lose weight, then they don't want to lose muscle, they want to lose fat. And so when people start to change their diet, some of their fuel is going to come from the stored fat, and that'll allow them to lose weight. But what we see is when people reduce their carbohydrate intake, so start to follow a low carbohydrate diet.
So they might cut out bread or cereals, pasta, potatoes. Yeah.
And if they don't replace it with anything, they go hungry. And then the diet isn't sustainable. And if people replace it with protein, protein can cause people to feel too full. So protein levels, you know, a low carbohydrate diet is a moderate protein diet, but it's not a high protein diet. So people need to fuel off fat. Now that fat is either dietary fat or stored fat in their body, and it normally is a combination of the two. Now we encourage people to eat fat to satiety, so to fullness, to true physiological fullness and not emotional fullness. And so that means that their fat intake increases. But we don't stipulate that they need to have to reduce saturated fat. So, you know, we've got different types of fat in the body. We've got the polyunsaturated fat, we've got the monounsaturated fat, we've got the saturated fat. Now, the polyunsaturated fats tends to come either from seeds and nuts or oily fish. So we've got the omega-6 and the omega-3. A lot of people have too much of the omega-6 through the vegetable oils, and they're very, very highly processed, and they're prone to damage in the body because the double bonds are not stable, and so that can cause inflammation in the body.
Can you give us some examples of some omega-6s? Would it be sunflower oil?
Yeah, so eating nuts and seeds in the natural form is absolutely fine. But when people, a lot of the processed foods nowadays and the fast foods are cooked in the seeded vegetable oils like the sunflower oil, the rapeseed oil, the corn oil, and you buy the vegetable oil from the supermarket, that's mainly polyunsaturated fat, the omega-6. And the processing from the seeds into the oil is very, very ugly. So they've added, they've added hexane and things like that, and they've bleached and deodorized the oil. So what you actually see in the bottle at the end is not a healthy product at all, and it's not stable. So as soon as you cook with it, it becomes oxidized.
What do you cook with?
So natural oil, so fats that are in their natural form are more stable. So you can cook with the extra virgin olive oil. You can cook with the stable fats such as the dripping, the lard,
coconut oil,
butter. Yes.
And you were telling us about the other types of fats. We did polyunsaturated, and then the saturated fats.
Yes, and then the other type of the polyunsaturated is the omega-3.
Right.
And the best source of omega-3 is from the oily fish. But you can get some from flaxseed and things like that. So if you're vegetarian, you can get it, but it's not quite in the active form. So the oily fish is the best way to get the omega-3.
Okay, so we want omega-3s, we want to limit omega-6. Yeah.
So we want the ratio between the, before the agricultural revolution, the ratio between the omega-6 and the omega-3 was like 1:1, and now it's like 16:1. So we need to...
With the 6 being bigger?
Yes.
Oh, right,
yeah.
okay.
So we need to have more of the omega-3 and less of the omega-6 to rebalance. Then we have the monounsaturated, so the extra virgin olive oil is a really, really good source of the monounsaturated, which is more stable. And so you can cook with the extra virgin olive oil, no problem, it's more stable to heat. And then there's the saturated fat that you get from the animal products and the coconut oil as well.
And other saturated fats would be cheeses, eggs, fatty meats. So was it controversial for you then to suggest that people can be reintroducing these fats into their diets? Because we've grown up, I mean, I've grown up in an era which has been low fat, low calorie.
Yeah. I think I used to be a fat-phobic dietitian myself. So my family laughed that I now eat butter. I never used to do. But when you look at the research, they say that half of what you learn at university is incorrect, but at that time you don't know which half is incorrect. And that's certainly true with saturated fat myself. When I looked in detail at saturated fats, I realised there's 36 different types of saturated fat, and they all have different properties in our body. And so you've got the short chain fatty acids, the medium chain fatty acids, the long chain. So they all have different properties and impact on our body differently. Then you have the odd chain and the even chain. So it's really, really quite complex. Now the short chain fatty acids tend to be taken up by our gut. And so they don't tend to get into our circulation. They feed our gut microbiota and our gut cells. So that's really, really good stuff. And we find the short chain fatty acids in the full fat milk and dairy. And there's been a lot of research now to suggest that people who have more of the full fat milk and dairy actually have a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Then we have the medium chain fatty acids, and they are taken direct to the liver where they're processed for energy immediately. So that's why a lot of people doing exercise will have the MCT oil. So coconut oil has got a large proportion of the medium chain fatty acids, so they don't tend to get stored in the body. So it's more the long chain fatty acids that are taken up by our fat cells, by our adipose tissue, and if you don't need it for energy, they tend to be stored.
So what foods would have the long chain in that we would probably want to limit?
So the longer chain, well actually, converting carbohydrate into fat leads more of the long chain fatty acids. So when people overconsume carbohydrate, then in the liver, you initially store it as glycogen, the carbohydrate storage, but if the glycogen stores become full, you then convert it into triglyceride, which is fat. And a quarter of the population now have evidence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that tends to come, we call it de novo lipogenesis. So that's de novo means new, lipogenesis means production of fat. So the new production of fat in the liver is more likely to come from carbohydrates than it is from fat. Now it produces the chain length of saturated fat 16 to 18. Chain length, so longer fatty acids, which have been shown to be more harmful for us, but it's not from the fat that you eat, it comes from over-consuming carbohydrates.
Yes. So with the short chain fatty acids, they are in butter?
Yes.
Is that right? Any other foods you could name check for
Cheese.
us? Okay.
Yeah.
YouTube viewers, I really appreciate you watching that video. It would be wonderful if you hit the red subscribe button. It costs you nothing and it means that you'll get notified whenever I post a Health Hackers video. You can follow me on social media too. Handles right beneath me. I love hearing from you. Bye bye.